then mute yourself. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going, everyone?
Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is. Nice to see y'all.
Hello. I guess I never realized we could talk and see the video. I'd just come up and see the Board of Education beginning at 7, and I've always just kind of felt like we were in a holding pattern here.
All right, we got Rick, we got Scott, we got Stu, we got Lynn. And let's next up, Mr. Kern. Ryan, whenever you're ready, I'll start rolling.
Ready to go.
All right. Mr. Kern, will you please call the meeting to order?
Yes, Mr. Harris. Mr. Melody.
Here.
Mr. Weininger.
Here.
Mrs. May.
Here.
And Mr. Valentine.
Pledge of Allegiance for this evening's meeting. Mr. Harris, will you lead
Yes,
it?
thank you.
And everybody else, please hit mute.
So please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weininger. Questions or comments? We do have executive session at the tail end. There will be no action coming out of executive session. All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Weininger.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Appointment of President Pro Tem. I'd like to nominate Mr. Harris as President Pro Tem to open the January 2021 Board of Educational Organizational meeting.
Thank you, Christopher.
All right.
Do you need a second, or is that just a, wait a minute, I'm not the parliamentarian, nor am I the president pro tem yet.
No seconds required, but then, yeah, do take a vote.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine, since you nominated.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mr. Weininger.
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn, Mrs. May, I'm sorry.
I don't care. I go by anything.
And Mr. Harris.
Yes, I think.
You did a good job last year, Stu.
All right.
Thank you.
It is our pleasure this evening to have State Representative Beth Liston here to speak with us and provide us an update on the happenings of the state legislature. Representative Liston, thank you so much for carving some time out of your schedule. You've done a great job providing us updates as things continue to evolve and change down at the State House, and we're very thankful for that, and want to give you this opportunity to provide us an update on your end and anything that you feel is relevant and that we need to know, especially as we're heading into 2021.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Valentine, Chris, and thank you all for having me here. I say that both as a state rep and as As a mom who's, dealt with all of the struggles that I know that many of those in the district feel related to school, I'm grateful for all the work that you've been doing. It's been a difficult year for so many reasons, and I know Dublin has done a great job of walking that line to try to keep everyone safe while still providing that high quality education. So thank you, Superintendent Holdley, especially for inviting me, and all of the board members for the difficult work that you've been doing this year. I'm honored to try to provide a little bit of an update on what's going on in the State House. I do have some slides. For the educators in the room, I have way too much words on the slides, or way too many words on the slides, but I wanted to have that information available. So I won't be going through all of the words because that would take a lot longer than I think people want to spend on this particular update. But I'll go ahead and share screen if that's okay, and kind of talk about some of the things going on in the state legislature. So I'm going to do just a little bit of an overview of where things stand in terms of state government. Talk a little bit about the Fair School Funding Plan, because I think that's been an ongoing conversation. We'll end with standardized testing, where things stand, and then some questions. Happy to answer questions about these particular issues or any others that you have concerns with or that are going on in the state government. So actually, let's start with a little bit of overview. As you probably are aware, we are finishing up the 133rd General Assembly. The Ohio House remains in session, but this is our last week. So we really only have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where we'll be hearing bills in committee and voting on Wednesday or Thursday. The Senate has one extra session next Tuesday. And at the end of this General Assembly, any bill that was previously introduced goes away. So it's a 2-year cycle. So a lot of the bills that we're talking about, if they do not pass at the end of this General Assembly, the whole process has to restart in January. Obviously, having gone through some vetting in this General Assembly, there's an opportunity for things to be a little bit more rapid in the next, but there is a new legislative body that is set. And so the players will change a little bit. So this period of time is called lame duck, and that's often a time where lots of things change quickly. So this is where things stand now. Anything that doesn't happen in the next week and a day won't until at the very earliest next January, when everyone's sworn in again at the end of the month. I did want to talk about the Fair School Funding Plan because, again, this is really, I think, a long time in the coming, looking at how we can address school funding in the state of Ohio and, deal with some of the constitutional questions that have arisen and make sure that there's equity, deal with things like growth that I know Dublin has experienced and has struggled with state funds to match. There have been 2 major bills introduced, House Bill 305 and Senate Bill, the companion bill, Senate Bill 376, that really revamp the entire funding system. This has been a long time in the making, both conceptually, but also in practicality as well. There was a large study group convened about almost 4 years ago now, which included multiple stakeholders from across the state and educators, as well as administrators and districts that are wide range, so including urban, suburban, rural areas, and dividing it into particular areas that needed to be looked at more closely for school funding. They came back with the Fair School Funding Plan, which is a bill that was introduced by now Speaker Cupp and Representative Patterson. So it was a bipartisan effort to really look at what the base cost for educating a student would be, what the state and local share should be, and how we should adjust this for specific student and our district factors related to what it actually costs for education. And this was done with these sort of values in mind. What should it cost to educate every child in operated district? Not a number that was sort of it's chosen in a seemingly or an unclearly rational way. So it's not clear what the original number went in, what calculations went into the original number many years ago to determine that baseline share for each student. This isn't, the intent is to be very rational. Ensure that students have their greatest potential regardless of economic circumstances or the school district's property wealth, that we're not favoring one type of district over another, and that the dollars directly go to where students are. And these are the overriding tenets for the whole process. And I'm giving you the Fair School Funding Plan, some of the PowerPoints that they give around the state to discuss and explain this bill. There's a lot more detail, and I'm just going to go through the overview as well, but happy to provide more info should people be interested. And I put the disclaimer, I didn't put these slides together. This was the group, the stakeholder group that did so, along with the legislative, the representatives and senators that are sponsoring those bills. So that first step was the base cost, really looking at the entire student. Like, what do we need from instruction or co-curricular, professional development, social emotional needs, etc., career counseling, technology, etc., to say what should the inputs be. And the base cost wasn't prescriptive. So as part of it, every single cost breakdown was considered, right? What the teacher ratio should be, how many administrators per student should it take based on best practices. That was how to calculate the base cost, but the bill itself didn't say, well, districts have to spend the money this way, just to allocate the money with those things in mind. And again, this is a super busy slide, but you can see that they really went pretty granular in determining what those optimal ratios are, what expenses for curriculars, for administration, and all of those components, the social emotional components. And I'll say this is outside of some of the funds that were in the state budget to specifically look at wraparound services. So separate, but also included in the base funds. Then, well, how much should the state pay versus how much should local pay? And obviously this has been a pretty contentious topic. I mean, our Constitution does say that it's a shared effort. And what that looks like and how it's determined was the question. And in the current formula has been widely criticized, I think appropriately so, that it was heavily reliant on property values. And this bill put forth the proposal to address that, looking at both property values, but lesser, and then actual income of the individuals within the district to determine what would be a sensible approach to look at district wealth. And then there were adjustments, right? Because obviously school districts that have a higher proportion of students with special needs, with IEPs, gifted students, different levels of poverty, they would require additional support to adequately address the educational needs of their kids. And so for each of these categorical aids, they determined how the cost, that base cost, would be adjusted with a focus on poverty. And again, there's a lot here, but increased the amount per pupil for those in poverty and prioritize that in terms of where the first funds would go. And then also looked at and provided for at least 1 year of high quality preschool education for 4-year-olds. They did this for special education, looking at what that would cost, gifted education, ELL students, recognizing that this would, require additional support for districts that educate students with these needs. And this has been a point, each of these components, certainly over the course of the vetting of this bill, had different groups come in and make small adjustments to how these were calculated and looked at the best approach for doing so. Transportation's big cost. This changes some of the transportation policy, in terms of how it's paid for, what the districts can do, and it changes some of the payments related to it. And then there were other funding considerations, and I don't have a lot of the things on here, but it did address career tech and some of the other specialized programs. The final thing I want to say as an overview for the fair school funding, which I think is important for most districts, is that it changed the way school choice programs were funded. Rather than the money coming directly from the district, it was simply, it's more centralized, right? So the direct educational costs would be calculated for the students within the district, and the funding of the community voucher programs would be its separate conversation, not related to this, which I think many people feel changes the relationship between charter schools and public schools, so that it's not a competition for those same funds, but rather there'd be ability to collaborate and come up with best practices for student populations. So this bill, as I said, has been a long time in the making. It did pass the House, both committee and then the House floor with an overwhelming majority. I believe it was 84-8 on September 9th, and then it was referred to the Senate Finance Committee. The Senate version, which started off the same but had different sort of changes as stakeholder groups met with them, remains in the Senate Finance Committee. It's had 2 hearings. It is not scheduled for a vote, and I would say the speculation is that although this passed the House, it is not likely to get a vote in the Senate in the next week, although there's a lot of advocacy groups because most teacher groups, school board groups, superintendent groups support this bill as a significant improvement to educational funding. As written in the House bill had a 6-year roll-in because there is increased cost associated with the bill, but feeling like this was at least the rational approach to how we should be funding students and getting there over time was an appropriate goal. So I think it's going to go away at the end of the year and not have passed, but the Speaker of the House, Speaker Cupp, this was a huge priority for him and an initiative he'd worked on even prior to his leadership position. So I think it's not going away completely, although one would hope. I would feel free to advocate for the Senate to continue moving forward with this particular bill. Okay, and then I'll talk a little bit about testing. Oh, do you want me to pause and?
Just for the sake of the public, especially our community members, what's some of the pushback that you're hearing out of the Senate as to why they're not going to take it to the floor?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. I mean, one is that increased expense in an unknown economic environment. I will say the state revenues have actually been, I think, a fair bit higher than people had feared. And obviously the underfunded formula of any sort, which is what we've been living in, is problematic regardless of how you address it, right? Like we're going to have a certain amount of money that's put into education next year, and obviously we would advocate that these formulas are fully funded for our kids. But I think there was a concern in that more unknown time frame. I think that some of it is Senate has had less time with it. It's really a bill that originated in the House and worked its way through the House, and it is complicated. So it is a matter of what the Senate president is prioritizing and how well he feels like this has been vetted by interests that represent the members of the Senate. So, yeah. Go ahead.
Representative Liston, this is Brian Kern, the Treasurer CFO. What we appreciate, as our own organization, so ASBO, which is the School Treasurer Organization, really on top with joined in with BASA and OSBA, which represents our board on really going through this. And we appreciate the House, taking the time to work through it. It was I believe, a bipartisan effort on both sides of the aisle per se. And, for Dublin in particular, it would have been another $11 million annually. And the thing is, it wasn't going to be phased in over 6 years. And I understand that allows, and Representative Liston, what I've seen from the year, revenues are up over what's been estimated between sales tax and income tax for the year. So, but still that 6-year period. So that's significant to our taxpayers. That would have been, they're looking at 3.5 mils potentially, or even more that was saved from the property tax side, plus the $1 million or more that we would save from the community schools being funded outside of the thing. So we appreciate this. There again, the biggest thing that we've always run into is the caps or the guarantees as a district or where we're at and our district residents. For every dollar they send to the state and income tax, we only get around 12 cents back. So I think a plan like this is advantageous for all districts for the most part. And really, I think it's we appreciate the work that went into it. And it would have meant good news for our Dublin residents from a local side of things. So.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Dublin definitely has had so much growth that cap has been a big issue. And I would say, I think this rational approach is both, appropriate for long-term investment in education, but also really looking at what is needed across all districts was helpful. Most districts really did get a significant benefit from this plan because it's, investing in kids in a way that really looks at what they need. So I'm not optimistic exactly that it's passing this year, but I am optimistic that it will remain something that we build from. Unfortunately, just not as quickly as I think we'd love. So. All right, I'll quickly talk about testing because I think this comes up a lot in the daily struggles of Dublin schools, all schools, and how we address this. I have on here one bill that did pass the House in early June, and this actually really was a bill that wasn't specific to the current environment in COVID and looked at decreasing graduation testing and creating some testing work groups to assess what should be done in terms of standardized testing in the long term. Probably the more rapidly moving and currently important bill is Senate Bill 368, which just passed the Senate Education Committee at the very beginning of this month, so about 2 weeks ago. And it addressed most of the COVID-related testing concerns. As you know, at the end of last school year, we did things like, say graduating seniors can graduate and not require as much in terms of those assessments. And that's what this bill does. So I, again, have way too much on these slides, but I circled a couple of things that I think are particularly of interest for people in that bill. So again, in Senate Bill 358, and that's Senator Fetter and Lehner who introduced this. So it does a lot of what was done last year so that we can get, public non-chartered public schools can get a waiver if it's granted, and it requires the superintendent of public instruction to talk to people about that waiver. So then, that we don't have to do the standardized exams during this really difficult time where it's hard to figure out how you would actually do so safely and what that would really mean for kids. And obviously there's more, I think, that we need to be looking at in terms of success this year than these standardized tests could possibly measure effectively. It extends the exemption for the third grade reading guarantee, among other things for some of these specific student groups and reporting processes. And then did the same things related to high school graduation, so that if students are on track to graduate there's authority within the school to graduate students without the difficult tests, the graduation tests, or even some of the exam processes at the end where their final grade can count, because we recognize that a lot of the students may be in a situation where medically they are quarantined or are sick or can't safely come in because of the pandemic situation. So this is the type of bill that can move quickly because it's so important right now. So it's only passed the committee in the Senate, but it may be something that, and hopefully I think will be something that we can see amended onto a bill or added as a vote in the next couple of days. Again, the last possible chances for the House would be Thursday as it stands. So if it hasn't happened by Thursday, it won't. But I do think there's a lot of bipartisan interest in addressing this for students and for schools. So, all right. And I may have taken more than my 10 minutes, I'm sorry. I know you guys have a lot of stuff to get through. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I should have put my email on here, beth.liston@ohiohouse.gov or rep21@ohiohouse.gov if people that are watching want to ask more information or get the slides or, yeah. Pause.
Representative Liston, this is Stu. Thank you for all your hard work. Before you depart, we know that you've been focusing on youth mental health issues, and you might have some, I think, early in 2021, you may have some events coming up. Can you just talk a little bit about that before you leave?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harris. Stu, I appreciate the question. I do think youth mental health is so important from so many different perspectives. I think you're referencing some training events that I held for people who worked with youth, whether it's a coach or a parent who has teenagers or a church youth group leader. It was a training program to help practice some of the critical conversation skills. Like if you would notice a child is struggling, how do you approach the individual? How can you assess for red flags that make you really need to escalate the involvement of other mental health professionals. So I did this a couple of times over the last year, although in-person events a little more challenging right now, and I'd be happy to do additional programs or connect everyone with the group. It was sponsored by a grant by National Suicide Prevention Organization. And there's a passionate nonprofit that does this for, as I said, those who work with kids. So that was one avenue. I think there's a lot that needs to be done for our kids right now. And again, grateful for the wonderful teachers that have been working hard with kids in a difficult time. I think everyone's feeling the strain. So I'll follow up afterwards and see if you have ideas on what we can do with these trainings or how it might best serve the district.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any additional questions before we let Representative Liston go?
Representative Liston, this is Brian Kern again, the treasurer. We'll be contacted. I'm not going to talk about lengths. I don't know if you've been aware of House Bill 751 that was Christmas treed into House Bill 38 and was passed out of the Senate committee this past week. I think it's scheduled for a vote probably either this week or probably next week, in the Senate potentially. It has to do with property tax challenges and stuff like that. That is very detrimental. As we talked about state funding, while property taxes is our most significant revenue, so we need to look at that and protect our tax base. So definitely be contacting you about that. I'm not sure how much information you have from your end of things on that information, but something just to look at for our districts, as it would be a dollar for dollar loss if some of those challenges are able to go through. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think often, unfortunately, there's changes to the tax code that don't take into account the specifics of the school district. So I appreciate the input. I know Todd Hoadley had brought the bill to my attention as well. So I don't have specifics on where it is in terms of the vote. It's a quickly changing environment, but I'm happy to connect as things change.
Yes, it is. It was one of those things. I don't think they even allowed opponent testimony on for it. So they just allowed a proponent. Anyways, we appreciate your efforts and always willingness to listen and work with our school district.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time tonight. So.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Hoadley.
Great, thank you, Mr. Valentine. Let me share for awards and acknowledgments tonight. We have our Golden Shamrocks for the month of December, and usually I'm handing the baton right now over to Doug Baker. But tonight I get to honor Doug Baker because he is our first Golden Shamrock recipient for the month of December. So a well-deserved recognition for Doug, and I get the honor to share a couple of things. There were many people that wrote in on Doug's behalf, and I want to read a couple of the things that were said just to embarrass Doug a little bit, but also more just to show how much he is appreciated here in Dublin City Schools. But one of the excerpts was Doug has worked for Dublin Schools for almost 20 years, I believe 17, Doug, but during this pandemic, and really also during this time of racial tensions, it's been an extraordinary challenge for our district, and Doug handles all situations with a sense of calm. He's always looking for positive stories and really wanting to share all the great things that happen across our school system. Another person wrote in that Doug's approach to his work is optimistic, professional, and kind. And he's the ultimate can-do attitude focused on ensuring that every community member in our very large and diverse community is always informed. Doug has a gift of writing, which is exceptional, and he's able to communicate effectively while showing compassion and understanding for our community stakeholders, while at the same time projecting knowledge and expertise for our district leadership. And then one more here, Doug is constantly looking for positive stories, to tell the great things that happen in our classroom, the outstanding work of our teachers, and the great accomplishments of our students here in Dublin City Schools. It is my pleasure to, again, just congratulate Doug for this well-received honor. Doug, please, on behalf of all of us, thank you for your efforts. Well-deserved. Our December Golden Shamrock, Mr. Doug Baker.
Thank you, Dr. Hoadley. Thank you, everyone. That's very nice. I appreciate the kind words. Just really briefly, I've been watching folks give their Golden Shamrock acceptance speeches for a long time now. I never thought I would be in this situation because I run that program, as I told the A-team when they surprised me the other day. It really is not an individual award. I have the best communications team in the state, and I want to thank Tommy Ewert, Eric Starkey, and Keeper and Grady for everything they do to support me, for everything they do to support the students and staff in this district. It is not easy to find positive stories in a global pandemic, but my team does, and we keep doing so, and we'll keep doing so. So I want to thank them. Thank you to the board. Thank you to my colleagues on cabinet. I've known a lot of you for a long time. And this district's always supported me personally and professionally. And I really appreciate receiving this award. Thank you.
Doug, very good. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Our second recipient for the month of December is Chad Isley, who is a health teacher and coach at Grizel Middle School. And we actually have a video for Chad here. So Eric, if you'll roll the video tonight, please.
Give me a second here.
Good evening, Dr. Hoadley, Mr. Valentine, and members of the school board. I want to thank you for this opportunity to recognize one of Grizel's finest and our teacher, Mr. Chad Isley. Chad has taught at this building since it's opened, and he teaches health and phys ed. He's our middle level content lead for health, and he also coaches football and wrestling. Let me take a couple moments and read some of the comments that have been sent in regarding Chad and his nomination for Golden Shamrock. I've had the pleasure of knowing Chad Isley for over the past 20 years as a teacher, coach, and leader in Dublin City Schools. I cannot think of anyone more deserving of this award. As a teacher, he is constantly thinking of inventive ways to make relevant content to his students. Though I have coached football alongside Chad, I have coached against him for longer. There is not an opposing football coach that I have more respect for. His decision making is always guided by what is best for his players. The players are always well coached and play the right way under his leadership. He works long hours to organize practices and sporting events for so many kids, and rest assured they are designed to give them the best experience possible. I would be thrilled to have my son play for him. I am proud to nominate Chad for this award as he truly deserves it. Chad is the consummate professional. He comes to work every day with a positive attitude and is adept at forming relationships with his students and athletes with remarkable ease. I have witnessed his excellent work in the classroom, on the football field, and on the wrestling mats. His character, sense of humor, ability to effectively communicate, work ethic, and professionalism are second to none. He has made my job much easier just with his presence and with the knowledge that when it comes to our football and wrestling programs at GMS, he has it all under control. The last one I'll read is from one of our parents. When I met Mr. Isley with my wife and my son Mario, who suffers from epilepsy and cerebral palsy, the meeting was tense and trying to say the least. My son desperately wanted to play football, compete and participate the same way his peers did. However, based on the guidance of doctors and the professionals at Grizel, this was not possible as it was too much of a risk to Mario's health. Mr. Isley, in spite of being part of the team that had to deliver the bad news, offered Mario an outlet through wrestling. While hesitant at first, Mario took Mr. Isley up on his offer and everything changed as a result. Mario joined the wrestling team and didn't know what to expect. Thankfully, Mr. Isley made Mario feel comfortable and treated him just like every other wrestler. Mario was grateful for this and thrived as a result and gained confidence as a young man. Furthermore, Mr. Isley proved himself to be a caring, thoughtful, and encouraging coach while still demanding the best of Mario. Mario excelled as a result of Mr. Isley's mentorship. Whether coaching, wrestling, football, or teaching in school, Mr. Isley goes above and beyond to inspire his players and students to be the best people they can be. I have no doubt that his efforts as an educator and coach at Grizel are building future leaders and contributing to members of society. Hence, I believe Mr. Isley is highly deserving of this prestigious award and has my serious recommendations for Golden Shamrock Award. Again, Dr. Hoadley and members of the board, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Although I've only known Chad Isley for about the last 5 months, I've been able to witness the great things that he accomplishes on the field, on the wrestling mats, and in the classroom. He has a unique ability to form great, strong relationships with his students where he holds them accountable. And I believe his biggest asset is he thrives and he's be able to instill a belief that these kids can do more than they thought they could. So again, thank you for this time.
Thank you so much for this award. I really appreciate it. It was a complete surprise. It's been a trying year for all of us, and this is putting a highlight on our year. Grant, I'd like to take this mask off and show my big smile. But I've worked over the years with a lot of great coaches, great families, all from here in Dublin, here in Grizel since it opened. And there's many things that change, a lot of things stay the same with athletics that we do, and continue to do our best in our classroom, whether it's remote or when the kids are back with their smiling faces. So appreciate it. Been done without a lot of people. So thank you all.
All right. Congrats to Mr. Isley on his well-deserved award. Public participation for issues on the agenda. I believe we've got 3 people signed up tonight. Is that right, Mrs. Ewart? All right. The first person, before they begin, you'll have 3 minutes. Please make sure you state your name prior to beginning your talk.
So my name is Nathan Asbury. I reside at 2530 Sarngton Drive. I'm a junior at Dublin Soda High School, a member of the Principals Advisory Committee, Student Senate, and the National Eagle Scout Association. So first, I'd like to thank the board and the district administration for all of their hard work this year to ensure that we can have as close to a normal year of learning that we can. My reason for coming here tonight is based on the health of my fellow students, friends, and peers. So within my group of friends, I noticed a serious decrease in mental health. I then decided to create and release a survey so I could gauge how students outside of my social group felt. I surveyed about 20% of my school, and I can count on one hand the number of students who said that they were feeling fine and happy. The other 98% reported feeling depressed, unmotivated, stressed, anxious, and isolated. The same students reported an increase in these feelings since the move to full online learning. Students also reported a higher amount of exhaustion and lack of focus. Many students are struggling to keep up with the work required, online calls, and providing for their families who are struggling due to COVID. Online learning requires a student to be in front of a screen for at least 6.5 hours a day. This does not include the extra work outside of virtual classrooms. Other students and I understand the reasons why we have to be online. Many of my friends and peers strictly follow the guidelines that are set by health officials. And in 5th grade science, I was taught that 2 hours of screen time, more than that, is considered unhealthy and detrimental to our health. Now we're expected to triple that number, and the results are clearly showing. Nearly all the students surveyed feel that the online system needs a little bit of reworking. So here are a few solutions that me and other students came up with. A lot of students asked to go back to the previous model that we had in August, with half of the classes being the first day and half being the second, or shortening class periods and compressing them, having like all 7 classes before noon, with the afternoon being optional office hours or asynchronous time that students can use to meet with teachers and catch up on work, or teachers could even use to grade and keep up with all the online assignments. Teachers have done above and beyond this year, and I'm very grateful for what they've been able to provide in and out of the classroom, and sincerely thank them for giving students every opportunity to succeed. Communication has been clear, And as one student has said, teachers are more aware and respect my personal home and mental health issues. I just politely ask the board to consider shortening our time required, as it will help students become much more productive and fight the fatigue and exhaustion that the long hours can cause. Thank you.
Nathan.
Oh, come back. Hello.
Excellent job, and thank you for coming to speak to us tonight. You did a great job representing your views, and I know that we hear from high school students through email from time to time, or parents about coming to speak. Thank you for taking the time this evening, because you could have been doing a lot of other things.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bernadette Richards. I live at 7405 Christie Chapel here in Dublin. Good job, Nathan. I'd just like to follow up. I agree with everything he said. Heartfelt thanks, true, sincere thank you to the board, Dr. Hoadley, everyone. I cannot imagine how much work you guys have done this year, making tough decisions, often thankless decisions, especially at the beginning when we really didn't have a lot of data. We really didn't know much about COVID. We didn't know how contagious it was, how severe, if it would run rampant through our schools like a Hollywood movie. We didn't know how much toilet paper we would need. We didn't know the efficacy of remote learning or hybrid learning, just lots of things. And you guys really put in the dedication, the research, the effort, everything you could do to help us out. I think now we're several months into this whole thing, and we do know some things. We know that PPE works. We know that private schools, some public schools, New Albany daycares that were in school full time didn't have catastrophic COVID outbreaks. We know that COVID is spreading through community, through non-PPE events and social gatherings. We know that the CDC and the AAP think that kids should be in school. We know that while some kids thrive in a remote learning model, many kids do not. We know here in Dublin that teachers and educational models make a difference. Many of our students do not have a stay-at-home parent or a work-from-home parent who has a flexible enough schedule to help them with their online schooling. And many of our kids are left home alone to manage their remote learning solution while their parents are at work. We also know academics, social, emotional well-being, as Nathan had just mentioned from his survey, are definitely suffering in this time. A specific speculation and worry that I have a high schooler and a middle school student. I'm just curious if these kids that are in this sort of educational model are going to be as competitive on SATs, ACTs, college admission, college academics as kids that are in a full-time model. It's not like all kids are in this model and all kids are going to get a special consideration. These kids are going to be competing with other kids that are in a full-time productive educational model. I think that when we're making tough decisions, we need to go with what we now know, utilizing data and guidelines, and focus on when the benefits outweigh the risks. We know that PPE works. We know that many professionals, including myself, have been working the whole time. We're safe, we're healthy when we're using the appropriate PPE. I think it's time to make the responsible choice, return our kids to in-school educational model that we know here in Dublin works. It's the Dublin difference. I mean, that's why many of us live in Dublin, is specifically for the school system. I'm just here to advocate for, as a mom and a healthcare provider, to advocate for full-time in-person learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking this evening.
Good evening. My name is Joe Gallo on Whitfield Drive. In November of 2019, I attended a school board meeting to highlight the district's lack of compliance with policy 2260, the non-discrimination and equal access to educational opportunity within our high school music program. Then, like everybody, 2020 hit. In one of the many COVID-related responses, the school board on June 8th, 2020, jointly signed and reinforced the exact non-discrimination policy of the district. In the fall of 2020, the high school music teachers agreed to change the program. All music students are now allowed to attend a music class during the day, and after-school activities are optional, finally aligning music with all the other activities in the high school, ending many, many decades of discrimination within our high school music programs. I want to thank you for not just signing a document, but truly supporting change. I expect now the change to be permanent, as it always should have been. I thought a simple thank you would be the end of my comments this evening. Unfortunately, I think it's important to share with the board the district office did not execute well or even acknowledge the discrimination issue. Last November, Dr. Hoadley directed the Director of Secondary Education to discuss the issue I raised at the school board meeting. Upon meeting, the director not even read my concern and was not aware of the discrimination. The meeting was, to say the least, not very productive. However, I was asked to be patient as academic change is slow. I was also told never to attend a school board meeting again. I never heard anything. I inquired about attending a virtual school board meeting, and then on Thursday, November 19th, after making my inquiry, I finally received a follow-up call. It was not to share positive results or acknowledge the lack of feedback as one might expect. Instead, it was to ask me only one question: why I wanted to attend a school board meeting. Reflecting on my experience, I can only conclude that the district office itself does not take discrimination seriously. It's a sad, very, very sad statement, but given no feedback and the odd inquiry call, I thought it important to share given your joint June 8th, 2020 statement on discrimination. I trust you as a board to make permanent the changes in our high school music program and to understand the issue at the district office. And again, I commend you for taking action. Many districts and many cities have signed such documents and not taken action. Finally, I would like to recognize Principal Ulrich for taking his time on Thursday evenings each week to conduct positive update meetings with parents. It's been quite a challenge, and I give him a lot of credit, but it's been a very good process. Thank you very much, and happy holidays.
Mr. Gallo, I just want to make sure that clear, we'll follow up with you, and you're most certainly welcome to attend any meeting that you so choose. And obviously, when we have opportunities to speak, you're more than welcome to speak at that time as well.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Have a good evening. Thank you all.
All right. Moving on from public participation for issues on the agenda, COVID-19 discussion. Dr. Hoadley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Let me welcome everyone here watching tonight. You know, one thing I've been, myself and Dr. Deagle have been meeting with all of our elementary staffs and really thanking them for all of their efforts, following up on Mrs. Richardson's statements tonight. You know, we want our kids in, we want our kids to be back at school, we want everyone to be safe. PPE mitigation strategies do work. So I do want to start off by just thanking our teachers for all their efforts and their hard work here tonight. Two things I want to bring tonight to the floor for a quick discussion. One is, in these meetings with our elementary staff, I shared that we would not be really announcing nor finalizing a determination of what our return will look like in January. We won't be doing that this evening. For members of the board, you're aware that our data metrics committee meets usually every Thursday. We're moving that up this week to Wednesday night. We want to continue to do what the community asks of us, and that is to look at the data, follow the science, and make good decisions for Dublin City Schools. So following the Wednesday night meeting of the data metrics committee, really anticipate being able to put out some direction as far as what January 4th, that first week, will look like back. Again, for our parents, that Monday is a day off as our teachers come in for training. Students come in, I believe, on January 5th. So again, we believe by Thursday, we'll be able to put out some written correspondence about what the first day looks like coming back in calendar year 2021. So I wanted to first off pause for members of the board, see if there's any questions about that first quick topic. All right, again, for members of our community, please watch for correspondence Thursday, sometime during the day, probably late in the day. We'll start off by sharing first with our teachers and then move that out, communication out to the rest of the community. The second item I want to bring forward, and again, following the data, following the science, this shifts away a little bit from our academic program, but more into our extracurricular program. Many of you are aware, all of you on this call are aware that last week our principals at the high school level voted in our athletic conference, the Ohio Capital Conference, to restart athletic programs December 18th, which is the conclusion of Franklin County Public Health stay-at-home order. Initially, we announced certain policies that were driven by our interpretation of the American Association of Pediatrics, or actually the American Academy of Pediatrics, announced some information on that, particularly around wearing face coverings or cloth masks for competitions. That brought a pretty strong reaction from a lot of people within our community. So last night we pulled together several members, multiple members, I should say, of our various medical teams, and really had an in-depth discussion about this decision. So on the phone with us for this meeting is our Kaufman team physician, Dr. Bob Whitehead. Bob, first off, thanks for joining us for this call tonight.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for having me. Thank, as Dr. Hoadley, and as well, thank you to the board for hearing our voice from the extracurricular committee.
So, Dr. Whitehead, if you could, we had a pretty robust discussion last night. We want to share a couple members of the board were participating. Another member of the board was able to listen in. But for our members of the community, can you talk about really what led to our positional shift and some of the science behind the recommendations of the extracurricular activity as it relates to mask wearing during competitions for athletics?
Sure. First off, I'll just mention to those members of the board that weren't involved last night, as well as to anybody listening who obviously wasn't involved. It was myself and other physicians who are involved in the Dublin school system in different ways, but Dr. Mark DeWalt, Dr. Steve Kirkby, were involved in the call. But I've also had extensive communication with Dr. Sickles, who is one of our team physicians as well, and Dr. Tom Hospital, who's also a team physician for us. So just so everybody knows, this wasn't it was not only my input, it was the input of multiple physicians. And essentially it was pretty much unanimous that we agreed that it was not necessary for our athletes, both in the middle school arena as well as in the high school age group, to wear masks during intensive activity, particularly in competition. And I'm going to go through some reasons that we made this decision. I'm going to try not to go into too much detail because I'm sure some of the board members will likely have questions, and we can get into more detail if that's the case. So, like Dr. Hoadley mentioned, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with their statement with regards to their recommendations, and they had recommended cloth face coverings for children to be worn during activities, particularly sports activities and competitive activities, athletics. Well, there was no specific scientific study or evidence that was cited. And that was one of the major reasons we felt comfortable not adhering exactly to their recommendations. Some of these reasons would include the following. The evidence would suggest that potentially the wearing a mask during competitive activity could be a competitive disadvantage. There's thoughts that it might lower exercise capacity and particularly also would increase perceived exertion. So that was part of our decision. There was also discussion with some of the team coaches, and there was concern that particularly in hockey that there may be an increase in risk due to some loss of not peripheral vision, but peripheral vision, but directly lower towards the ice, not to the side. But the newer hockey masks have these an attachment that they can put a cloth mask in there, but the bottom goes outwards away from the face towards the cage or the mask there as well. And it can affect lower peripheral vision, so they can't see the ice as well. Therefore, if they're puck handling, they couldn't see the puck as well, and therefore they have to put their head down a little bit intermittently, which may predispose them to a collision. So that was considered. It was also considered that the population we speak of is a low-risk population, and what we mean by that is that if they do get COVID, the odds of a significant illness is very, very low. And the odds of any catastrophic result is even far below that, well below 1%. But probably one of the major reasons that we made this decision, or recommendation, I should say, is that the existing data that we have access to really steers away from the thought that there is spread during competitive activity and competitive practice. As you're aware, or maybe not aware, Dr. Hospital is involved in professional Major League Soccer, and he has access to the ear of many other physicians throughout the country, as well as the other team physicians, including myself, have access to conversation with Big Ten head team physicians as well. In addition, Dr. Hospital, being involved in professional sports, has some access to the NFL, some NFL coaches as well as, physicians as well as NBA team physicians. And the data which they have done, although this is not published, the NBA and the NFL have really intense tracers attached to all their players. And they are, through this tracing, they are not seeing the spread of the virus during competition and really even towards practice. Inter-squad spread has been linked to team meetings, social events outside of practices, or in the locker room where they are not using appropriate protective face coverings. So with that said, I will also add that one or two of our physicians that directly in the district thought that they went as far as to believe, although that the evidence is not out there to say that it's convincing, although there is some evidence out there, is that these masks could lead to even some potential harm. Now, I will add, because someone will probably want to correct me, that the data out there is mixed, without question. There are some studies that suggest that there is potential for metabolic harm using a mask and participating in a high-intensity aerobic activity, whereas other studies have come out and and found that there was no suggestion that this would happen. So, but some of our physicians felt that their medical thought process led them to believe that it probably is the case that it has the potential to lead to some harm, particularly in an individual that might have a predisposing risk. So collecting all that data, we felt that the data out there at the present time does not lead to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that we should definitely be wearing masks during competitive athletics. I will also add, and I mentioned this last night at the meeting, that when you look at these studies across the board, they're really, in a way, tainted or spotted by verbal data or verbal or verbiage, I should say, like we theorize, we postulate, it's theoretical, it's potential. And so when they talk about how the spread of the virus could occur during high competitive athletic events, as well as when we talk about the potential for adverse effects. So that there's no hard data, I guess, in summary, to state one way or the other, but definitely the preponderance of medical evidence that we have access to suggests that particularly through the tracing, and we've done it in the schools as well, in Dublin City schools. We don't have evidence through our own tracing that the athletes are getting it through practice and or competition. So with that said, I will leave it to that. And certainly if there's any questions from the board or Dr. Hoadley, it'd be my pleasure to entertain them.
Members of the board, what questions might you have for Dr. Whitehead tonight?
I have a couple of quick questions. Are masks still going to be required for practices?
Yeah, very good question. It was the recommendation of the committee that, for example, masks would be worn pretty much throughout the entirety of a practice. So going into the school, or if these athletes are busing somewhere, in the locker room, during warm-ups, during low-intensity drills, if they come out of a high-intensity activity, they put their mask on. At the game, if they're on the bench, they're social distancing and they have their mask on. They'll keep their mask on unless they go into the game, and then they'll take it off as well. So we all agree that that is appropriate, and that certainly should, if possible, help deter the spread. But the only time they wouldn't be wearing them is with significant high-intensity activities in a practice and in the actual competition on competition day itself.
All right, thank you. And then just a few other ones, like, are there going to be any other recommendations as far as, say, like temperature checks before competitions, or limiting playing time to 15 minutes or less to reduce that potential exposure time, limiting spectators, or increased sanitation, use of hand sanitizer, or cleaning of the equipment, or anything like that during competitions?
Yeah, I can, some of those questions I can answer. Certainly, we've had a lot of discussion about limiting the particular, I guess in general, it would be the fans that come in and the parents. And we, at present, it's 2 per athlete, unless that's changed recently. But we've had discussion if we, coming back initially, that maybe it's 1 or maybe it's 0, but that has not been decided at this time. Your other questions are excellent because, I didn't mention, but there's a lot of data that discusses that wearing these masks, because you're breathing and it's humid, that the mask will saturate pretty rapidly. And the thought is that with a saturated mask, there's an increased risk of a negative effect on the athlete, and as well, an increased risk that maybe that mask could have captured non-aerosolized viral particles, and that in touching the mask when it's wet, it could potentially increase the potential spread. So our recommendation, that's another reason why we thought that they shouldn't wear masks when they're at high intensity training or high intensity sports in competition per se, because that's going to increase the amount of time that, or decrease the amount of time actually, that these masks are going to become saturated. And if an athlete's out on the floor or on the ice for maybe 5 minutes, there's a good chance that it's going to be saturated, and then they're going to be touching the mask more frequently. And all the recommendations are that you shouldn't be touching your mask, and particularly if it's wet. And then anytime you do touch the mask, you should sanitize your hands. So it became more, it became more obvious to us that, if they're going to be saturated, they're going to have to change your mask more frequently. And so it's going to lead to some difficulties with that regard. So yes, we've recommended that, they should be hand sanitizing when their mask becomes saturated, or if they're touching their mask, or when they're coming on and off, and they're not putting their mask on appropriately. Obviously, you can put a mask on and not ever touch. If you're using ear loops, you don't have to touch the mask per se, but certainly having the hand sanitation has not gone away. That's still highly recommended. All those other recommendations, coughing into your elbow, etc., those are still highly recommended. It's just the mask is the only change really that we've recommended during intense or competitive activity.
Okay, thank you. And then I have just one final question. It's probably more directed towards Dr. Hoadley, but so I guess I'm just looking for a better explanation on why we think it's okay for athletes to participate in person with minimal or no social distancing, no PPE at the high school, middle school level, but at the same time, we say high school, middle school, it is not safe for them to be in school with PPE and with social distancing at this time that we are full remote.
Dr. Whitehead, I don't know if you want to go first, if you'd like me to take a shot at that answer first.
No, I can do that. Well, the initially, if you go back to the fall, it was the governor's recommendation that sports would go on, and there is no good scientific evidence to state that during sports activities and during sports that there's extensive spread. So I think that still carries on into the the winter sports. I think when you look at the data on contact tracing, and I let me preface by saying I'm not familiar, and I don't try to cite data from schools in classrooms. But I can cite data from discussion with team physicians, as I had cited earlier, and our own contact tracing. And we do not see the risk. We do not see the risk with an athlete coming into a school using appropriate precautions as outlined previously, and participating at high intensity without a mask, because number one, there is no scientific evidence that it is that it does place the athlete at risk, and our personal contact tracing and contact tracing through the sports, as I discussed earlier, doesn't support it either. It just doesn't support that teams are a nidus of infection or super spreader, as some of the terminology has come to. What the data shows is that the spread is really in social situations. And, I said it kiddingly at one of the meetings, but in a way it's true. Probably the safest place for some of our students is to be for our athletes, student athletes, is to be in practice all day, because they really don't have, we don't see that spread there. It's when they go to a party or when they go do something socially, or they break the PPE code, so to speak, outside of practice, or in more of meeting situations in practice. So like I said, we just don't see that the risk is there. Now, it's difficult for me to speak on your point about why kids aren't going to school. I would let Dr. Hoadley answer that question, or the board itself. I didn't make any of those decisions, and I didn't have any input on those decisions. But so I can only speak, and I'm not saying that they're wrong. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm just saying that my interpretation of the data that's out there, in my opinion, as well as the opinion of multiple other physicians, is that it's not placing our kids at risk to play a sport, to go to practice. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
I can add in a couple.
Dr. Hoadley.
Yeah, I can add in a couple things. Dr. Whitehead, first off, thank you for being here tonight and for those answers there, and for also jumping on, giving up a good part of your Sunday for discussions yesterday and last evening as well. Really appreciate your willingness to have those conversations, to talk to so many of your colleagues, and to really give us, again, that scientific background, that medical background that really helps us make the best decisions we possibly can during these really unprecedented times. Moving, Mr. Melody, over to your question about inside the school. I think that's our goal. We want to get our kids back in school. Some of the things that are a real challenge right now for us when you're comparing athletics to in school, one of the things we know about our athletes, they've all been through physicals. They've been checked out by a doctor. We know what type of health issues they might have. Most do not have underlying health issues there. Again, their physical condition is very, very high. And also it's an extracurricular. So it's not a have to. Kids, once we open up, kids legally have to come to school. That's compulsory education. But this is not a have to. This is a choice being made by parents, being made by students to participate in these extracurricular activities. Like the fall, we want to make sure that we also have waivers in place. All of our fall athletes, our parents signed waivers for them. We're actually working to update our waiver here for our winter sports athletes, working with legal counsel for that. And then also just the sheer numbers, the volume for in-school learning, even in hybrid, is multiple times larger than what we're talking about here. Having 10 student athletes in a basketball, playing basketball in a gymnasium versus maybe having 20 in a 900 square foot classroom, slightly different there. But again, I'd say our goal is to get our kids back in school. And so we want to see the same opportunities for our kids in math class as we have on our athletic fields of competition.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hoadley and Dr. Whitehead.
Dr. Whitehead, thanks again for being here tonight. Members of the board, any other final questions before we let Bob get back to his real life here?
Just a quick comment. I sat in on the meeting last night, and our medical personnel that share their expertise with the district is wonderful that they are able to do that and that they are so knowledgeable about these events. The one thing that I would say is that in the fall, we were very successful with our athletic teams and not spreading COVID that much. I'm not saying zero, but overall we did a great job. But one thing the CDC did say that if you are unable to wear a mask in those high intensity situations, try and have all the other factors in your favor. And one of those was increased ventilation systems. So I hope that, you know, as we move inside, that we really take a hard look at the ventilation systems of our athletic venues, whether it be the gym or the wrestling rooms or wherever, just to make sure that we're addressing that ventilation. That's all. Thank you so much, Dr. Whitehead.
Thank you.
And then finally, just sharing or wrapping up this topic. Again, I mentioned the waiver. We're working with legal counsel on that. And then also I mentioned right at the beginning of this, December 18th, when that was originally put into place as a date to resume competition, that's with the extinguishment of the Franklin County stay-at-home order. We're going to find out whether or not that could possibly be extended. And so that could cause a different ripple, something else we would have to work through potentially. Again, we'll find out later on the week as far as the thought process on the Columbus Public Health and Franklin County Public Health. And once we know that information, we'll gain back together and go forward on that. So again, we're trying to follow the direction that our community gave us in August. You know, rely on these medical experts, lean on them, take their advice. We're not doing that just carte blanche. We're trying our best. And again, these are very, very fluid situations, trying to do the best we can for our community and moreover for our students here at Dublin City Schools. Any final questions before we leave this topic?
Dr. Hoadley, before we leave the topic, I want to make sure I give a chance to any other members of the board to say anything. I have a few remarks that I just want to go over as we transition here into 2021 and continue to move forward. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to address?
Hi, Chris. This is Stu. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the medical committees and Dr. Hoadley and all the board members and others that have been participating. A quick question, Dr. Hoadley, you said the stay-at-home order. Could you tell me how those intersect?
As far as this, the stay-at-home order was put in place right previous to Thanksgiving. If you remember the television, I hate to call it event, I'm not trying to downplay it, but Mayor Ginther, Dr. Makita Brown from Columbus Public Health, and Commissioner Joe Mazzola, several.
I understand. I mean, I know what it is. How does it affect the winter sports season?
Well, when that was put in place back in November, our principals around the conference, the OCC, came together and paused because they didn't want to start the season under the stay-at-home order. We were purple as a Franklin County at that time. There was a time where Delaware County, I believe maybe Union County went purple as well. So there were several indicators in late November that just caused everyone to say, let's press pause. Let's give us a little bit of time. And so again, that's happened. And we've been able to do practices with, again, a lot of mask wearing, a lot of mitigation strategies in place. But again, that order is set to go out at the end of this week on Thursday night, I believe at midnight. And so we're just watchful and dialoguing to find out what next steps might be should that be extended. We don't have a signal whether it will be extended. I don't believe we're going to be transitioning into purple this week in Franklin County. So that's another major variable there. But we do want to make that known that that's what triggered this at the beginning. And we just don't know right now what is going to happen Thursday as far as that stay-at-home order.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other additional comments? All right. With that said, while COVID has affected everyone, schools have faced some of the most complex challenges in 2020. Back in August, our Dublin community, including our parents, employees, teachers, association leaders, said, follow the data and science and listen to the medical experts. Your board agreed with that approach, and we wanted to remove the politics and rely on the data. So we assembled an incredible group of medical professionals who've been volunteering their countless hours of their valuable time, as we saw here tonight. One arm of that is the COVID Data Committee. The fact that your board and administrators have accepted the recommendations of these experts shows we take science seriously and we put student and staff safety first. The latest learning mode recommendation came directly from our COVID Data Committee. It wasn't proposed by Dr. Hoadley or a board member. It was the unanimous recommendation of the medical experts. I think we all know how hard it is to get in a consensus in these divisive times. Our experts are on the front lines of COVID, and they have access to local data from Ohio Health, Ohio State, and Children's Hospital. Furthermore, their recommendation squarely aligns with the guidance from the Center for Disease Control and more recently with the advice of Dr. Anthony Fauci. When proper mitigation strategies are being followed, which we are doing, we're not perfect, but we will continue to pursue that. We simply are not seeing COVID transmission at this age level. Since November 11th, we have 14 cases that have been traced to in-school transmission. Of those 14, 4 link back to our SLCs. In fact, the available contract tracing data shows that most transmission, regardless of age, is occurring outside of our school buildings. This is good news for our schools, and it's based on solid science. We know that there are members of our school community who are considering other information and factors beyond this medical data. For example, recently, the State Teachers Union called for an immediate end to all in-person instruction anywhere in the state. State leaders have not gone along with that demand. Here in our district, local governance is guiding the way for our decisions. We gather local data that's relevant to our school community, and we listen to the doctors who can explain how that data affects our students and staff. We love our teachers, and we have some of the best in the state. We want to keep our teachers, as well as our students and other staff members, safe. Our decisions, based on the science from the medical experts, shows that we're doing that. Now, I don't mean to suggest that we won't have disagreements. We won't agree all the time. But when we do disagree, we need to communicate in ways that are respectful and productive. And most of us are doing that. Before tonight's meeting, I had a very productive conversation with DEA President Donna O'Connor. I thank her for her service during this challenging time. Just like us, she has a divided membership. She has some teachers that want to be in the classroom every day in some capacity, and she has others that believe we should be in full remote learning. Walking away from that conversation, she noted, we may not get everything right, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. We got to move forward, not back. When we have disagreements with our Teachers Association, our long tradition has been to meet and discuss those disagreements. Now is no different. We want to work with our teachers to make sure that their voices are heard. Our administrative team will do that by proceeding in good faith under Ohio's collective bargaining laws. But for the few who are engaging in counterproductive antics, let me be clear, a failure to comply with board policy or the law will cause us to take appropriate action. All of us need to work together, even when we have different perspectives on the problem. We must follow the rules, follow the law, and follow the science. To keep our community safe, your Dublin City Schools leadership is doing that. Lastly, as we head into winter break, I want to thank our teachers, our bus drivers, our custodians, our administration, and our administrative assistants, and all those parents at home who are doing double duty. We know this has been a challenging time, and we thank you for rising to the occasion. We know that you are tired, and this time away will provide a much needed opportunity to hit pause, get some rest, and count our blessings. Thank you for all that you are doing right now. All right, moving on. Superintendents, our board president's Board of Education comments. Is there anything additional that someone would like to add? Reports and action items from the superintendent.
All right, thank you, Mr. Valentine. I just have one item tonight for your consideration. This is a second reading and potential approval for 1 new and 4 revised policies. Again, all coming out of Neola, our board policy recommendation provider here. We have sexual harassment updates that are being driven by changes at the federal government. And then that is also then rippling into several of our anti-harassment policies. You've had these policies in your hand to review for the last couple of weeks. Any questions on any of these policies being recommended for either updating or revisions this evening? All right, hearing none, let me just close my comments tonight before you consider that recommendation. Mr. Valentine, I really appreciated your words. You thanked so many people, but I just want to thank our Board of Education members here. I cannot tell you, all 5 of you have been on numerous extra meetings since COVID broke out. You've been on so many of these doctors' meetings. Some of you are participating directly. Some are just listening in for 2+ hours. Your dedication to our community, your dedication to our children, your dedication to our teachers is not going unnoticed or not going unnoticed. And I really want to thank each and every one of you. And then I also want to echo Mr. Valentine's comments. Just thank you to our teachers, to all of our classified staff, our administrative team. 2020, I think we are all happy to turn the page. It has been really, really rough since March hit and everybody had to turn on a dime. I know we're frustrated with this. Our patience as far as living in a pandemic is really growing thin. You know, great news today. I was able to share with our boards that we're getting the news that vaccines are on their way. I think there was reports of actually vaccines being given to frontline healthcare workers in the state of Ohio. We know we're not at the front of the line for those types of vaccines, but we're also not 4 hours deep at Cedar Point waiting for that roller coaster ride as well. The vaccines are coming and they will make a difference, but we have to stay vigilant. We have to do all the things that we know are necessary to control the spread, especially on these upcoming December holidays and New Year's. We all have to do our part to keep each other safe. And again, I'll just conclude my comments tonight by thanking our community, thanking our teachers, thanking board, thanking classified staff, administration. The end is in sight. We're not rounding third and heading for home, but we're probably rounding second, heading for third. Let's just stay vigilant. Let's have each other's backs. Unity is okay. We can disagree, but we can still be one Dublin here and take care of each other. Thank you, everyone.
All right. It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve the attached new and revised policies. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weininger. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Treasurer's comments.
Thank you, Board. Just a few things on the agenda is approval of donation from AM Rotary to Wright Elementary, and our November financial report, which, as I reflected in my update over the weekend, that reflects the 5-year forecast revision that we did, and we'll continue to monitor as we go forward. You heard Representative Liston talk about the school fair funding school plan and the comments on that, so I won't touch over that, but mentioned House Bill 751 that was rolled into House Bill 38. We'll continue to advocate our local representatives to make sure hopefully that does not go through, as it could be detrimental to some of our tax revenues on the next couple of years. So other than that, is there any questions?
All right. It's recommended by the treasurer and the Board of Education approve items 8B, 8C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May, second by Mr. Melody. Additional questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Ms. Reinhardt, pinch hitting tonight.
Yes, I am for Dr. Deagle tonight. We actually just have one small item for your approval this evening, and it's a contract with Minds on Math for the Riverside Elementary Title I Family Engagement Night. So that will be paid for by the Title I funds for Riverside. So there are no questions on that. I'll take us to the next item. which I'd like to ask Mr. Tom McDonald, our Director of Secondary Education, to unmute. And he is going to present the first reading for our high school course handbook. And I have to tell you, I'm really proud of Tom and his team of Lori and Lindy and Christy and many others, that even during a pandemic, they're going to improve our handbook and our scheduling process. And he's going to share that with you now. So Tom.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, members of the board, Dr. Hoadley. Dr. Hoadley talked about turning the page, and I'm pleased to present tonight for you for the first read, the 2021-2022 High School Course and Career Handbook. However, I'm equally pleased to tell you about a team effort that took place to also prepare the very first course and career website for our students, parents, and staff. I'd like to start my presentation by acknowledging that the work that our members of our academic team, our high school guidance counselors, department chairs have completed over the past 3 months was much more than just preparing a 109-page course handbook. This is really the kickoff for our entire scheduling process, which will encompass upcoming student scheduling meetings, the building of a master schedule to meet the student course requests of next year's high school students, the hiring of teachers to teach these courses, and ultimately giving our students the knowledge and direction for their future education and careers. This is a very big first step. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the process that we completed over the past couple of months. In September, our district department chairs were asked to give feedback on our current course offerings and to give suggestions for improvement for next year. For the past 2 months, we've had weekly handbook committee meetings that included high school assistant principals, our lead guidance counselors, as Jill mentioned, Lori Marple with her career lens, Lindy Schweitzer and her educational technology lens, Christy Venny with her career education lens, Erica Stone with her EL lens, along with Dr. Blevins, Lori Misi, and Mark Etherton from the Emerald campus. Everyone contributed in a very meaningful way. We brought a national and international expert to take a look at what we were proposing for a school website. And we brought in Ella Johnson. She's a senior at Dublin Jerome High School. Ella is looking to continue her studies next year at international and some U.S. college and universities. She is a very impressive young lady. Ella made some suggestions to our group, and she said that we should be concise, to the point, utilize pictures and student videos, and make the website clear and easy for navigation. Our group was very impressed. And from that, we realized that that student voice was definitely needed in creating our student handbook, and more importantly, the website to convey our 109 pages of course offerings. Instead of reading the proposed updates to you, I'd like to show you where these proposed changes would live within our new website, as I know most of these updates have been mentioned at previous board meetings and also in board updates. If the format is acceptable, I'll present my screen and certainly see if you have any questions once I finish the presentation.
Any additional questions, comments?
Quickly present. All right. Okay. So our course and career planning website, you can, on the main page, you can see links to each of our 3 high school guidance departments, and you'll see those along the bottom here. You also see our board approved handbook, and this is just a draft because this is the first read. The approved board handbook will always be here, course handbook will always be on this main page. We will continue to add videos throughout the year to bring student voice to our courses as well as the staff. Along the banner at the top of this website, you can see a number of tabs: career planning, graduation requirements, academic pathways, and areas of study. I'd like to start off, I have to move my screen because I see all of you, but not the top tab. When you look at the first graduation requirements, it's very important for us that our students know exactly the graduation requirements for their class. And you can see that each year, as part of our handbook, we continue to try and make this clearer and clearer for all of our students. So this is another attempt to just continue to clarify the graduation requirements that our students need depending on their class. We also, there's becoming an increased focus on graduation seals, and this will be a permanent graduation requirement for the class of 23. But you can see that we're listing and clarifying all of our state and local graduation seals so that our students and their families can understand these graduation seals. Next, academic pathways. And if you look in our academic pathways, we have a lot to choose from for our students. So you can see, and I'll touch on a few of these, but our traditional courses, DCS virtual, their guidance counselors always want students who might potentially be looking at going on to the NCAA to take a look at NCAA requirements. The Bridge, Mark Etherton and his team do a fantastic job. All of our academies at Emerald Campus, Tolles Career Technical Center, our IB program, and College Credit Plus. So I'm going to click on a few of these, but I'm going to start here with the Emerald Campus. I mentioned student voice a couple of times, and you can see our academies. Lori Misi is our coordinator that oversees our academies here at the Emerald Campus, and she works with a great team. And you can see our current 8 academies: Biomed, Cyber Academy, DBA, DTA, our Engineering Academy, Entrepreneur Academy, IT, Sports Science, YPA. And then we're going to present tonight for consideration a new Aviation Academy and an Arts and Communication Academy. So student voice, and that was really when Ella Johnson spoke to us. We really want to make sure that we're including that student voice, and that we're just starting to scratch the surface with this website. But over the course of time, we're going to be able to add additional voice with our programs. But here's a quick clip.
Tom, are we supposed to hear? It's low on our end.
I'm trying to. Sorry. So I'm sorry about the volume. My volume is turned up as loud as I can do it, but you will hear the voices of our students. And this is about a 1.5-minute video clip. But the idea is that our students will tell the story of our offerings. When we continue to work with our programs, our goal is over the course of the year to keep adding these student voices and our staff to describe these the course offerings. When we talked to Ella Johnson, exceptional student. She had looked at our course handbook, and she mentioned that her mom had gone to an IB presentation when she was in 8th grade, and that's why she knew exactly where to look on our very large course handbook. But the goal is to keep adding these voices. So I want to talk about a couple of our other additions that we like to propose in some of our academies. So further on down in our academies, I mentioned Cyber Academy. Cybersecurity specifically is one of the fastest growing industries. It's been estimated that there will be at least 3 million unfilled jobs in the field in 2021. The creation of an Intro to Cybersecurity course at the home schools will provide an opportunity to increase enrollment in the Cyber Academy program and create a pipeline to the Emerald Campus. Having a strong cyber academy program will enable students to earn valuable industry credentials. These credentials include A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and a number of others that will be highly desirable and employable in any post-secondary cybersecurity role. So that's one example of an additional academy, cyber academy, or I should say a refresh for Cyber Academy. Aviation Academy has been discussed for a number of years, and students in this academy will explore multiple aspects of the aviation industry and flight fundamentals while gaining insight into the many careers available in aviation. By the end of this year-long academy, students will earn 8 OSU semester hours, a drone remote pilot license, and be prepared to take a written test for FAA private pilot certification. Students must be 16 and over to participate. And there are 3 components of this program that we're proposing, this academy, excuse me: Intro to Aviation Industry, Private Pilot Fundamentals, and Aviation Research and Field Experience that would be held at Don Scott Airport, which for those not aware, near Wright Elementary. So it's right in our backyard. So we have a couple of additional academies that we'd like to propose and refresh. Communications Academy is another academy that we're looking at. In this academy, it's a redesign of our current communications courses into a communications academy at the Emerald campus, which will encompass much needed update to align with current industry trends. The Communication Academy will provide students with the skills, knowledge, and experiences for careers in digital video, graphic design, and social media industries. Students entering the academy will select from one of 2 career pathways: digital media or digital graphics and social media. This academy is in collaboration with Tolles Technical and Dublin City Schools. Students who participate will travel to the Emerald campus and have an opportunity to partner with Dublin City Schools Communications Department while having the potential to earn industry credentials. And as a side note, when I mentioned to our communications department the possibility of working with our students if they were at the Emerald campus working on our communications academy across the board, Doug's wonderful team was like, that would be so exciting to work with our students in that capacity. And the ceiling is limitless. So those are a couple of the examples. With the centralization of our communications academy, it also gives us an opportunity to use one of our Tolles FTEs for a workforce ready career program. I want to go just kind of change the screen here and show you under the bridge. We have, and every one of our programs are listed. We have some pictures of our staff members here at the bridge, phenomenal group and great students. But workforce ready, we're really excited about this. It's a refresh of our CBI program. Career-based intervention is a cooperative job training course that requires between 1 and 2 periods a day of classroom instruction. Students attend the regular classes at Emerald campus and will have release time to gain on-the-job training with community employers with 120 hours of employment per credit hour granted. Up to 3 credits per year can be earned. In this program, students will explore 6 CBI areas: academic intervention, career exploration, career planning, employability skills, career pathways, and work-based learning. This was a collaborative effort between Mark Etherton and Christy Venny, and I believe Christy touched upon this in a previous board update. So we're pretty excited about some different pathways and a couple new academies that we're proposing. And Dr. Hoadley has said many times that our programs here at the Emerald campus, we want to continually be looking for ways to refresh them, update them, make our kids have a competitive advantage, and to certainly expose them to many different fields. And I mentioned before the cybersecurity field, there are millions of jobs that will go unfilled in our country. So to allow our students to get a jump and get an insight into some fields that are not only exciting, but will potentially give them a leg up for a future job is pretty exciting. you can see that under academic pathways, we have our CCP, our College Credit Plus. So we go through and we kind of will explain the different pathways, College Credit Plus options that, that students can choose from. Our IB program, we list all of our IB programs and break it down year 1, year 2. So this is a great way to draw our students' attention. All of these all of the links on our website will be linked to the websites back in the guidance department, and in particular at the Emerald campus, in particular the International Baccalaureate program. So Tolles Technical, I mentioned earlier, we have great partnership with Tolles Technical. So we link right to their webpage and let our students know of the different options that are available for them. DCS Virtual. So this is new this year, and we're very excited about these courses. The development of these courses has been a collaborative effort by DCS Virtual Coordinator Aaron Schulteis, as well as our DCS teachers. These courses will allow for additional flexibility when our students schedule their classes. As a side note, last year, I had the opportunity to shadow one of our students, a Scioto student, who participated in IB courses and an academy here at Emerald campus, but also wanted to be in the band back at Scioto. So I know that Kevin would have benefited from an opportunity to have some flexibility within his schedule. So we're pretty excited about these courses, and we currently have 3 courses: personal finance, financial literacy, and health and PE. And next year we have 10 courses that have been designed and will be ready to go for our students. I'm going to move to areas of study, and here you can see all of our departments, and I want to draw attention to social studies. So all of our social studies courses are listed here, and we had a refreshment of a number of our social studies courses this year over the past 5 months as part of our district equity work led by Dr. Deagle and Mrs. Reinhardt, and from our social studies curriculum review cycle that we've been participating with our social studies department chairs, district lead, and a number of social studies teachers at the middle schools and at our high schools. So that work has been ongoing, and we've refreshed modern world history, contemporary world issues, and IB history. So we continue to go on curriculum review cycles, and this year we're fortunate enough to enter into the work with social studies. Finally, I'd like to draw your attention to the career planning tab that's on the first one here. And the planning document on page 6 of the handbook talks about the college and career planning, and planning your courses is much more than just selecting courses that might interest you or that you might think would be wise to take so that you can apply to a college and be successful. But in these 4 steps, and I should back up, Christy Venny's done a lot of work, and I know she presented recently, but the career and academic planning, this page, we've laid out that we want our students to go through these 4 phases: to be more self-aware, to connect to careers, to set a goal, and to map it out. And I circled back and want to end the very quick kind of overview of this website to show you that right at the beginning of our course handbook, we look at an academic and career pathway plan. So starting with next year's class, we want all of our students to start their high school career, and this is K-12, and Christy is having conversations with all of our principals at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high. But as they enter high school as freshmen, we want our students to work with their families and our guidance counselors to look at career pathway goals, programs and experiences and activities that students might think through the career phase and through the work that we're going to be doing with our guidance counselors and with Christy Venny in her new role. to talk about goals. And then we want to align courses that are going to help students successfully set themselves up for future majors in colleges and careers. So we have this page right at the beginning of our course handbook, along with the graduation requirements, because no longer is it just about your graduation requirements, but we really want students to think about their career and academic pathway for success. So I know that was a lot of information, and I want to go through and just kind of give you a surface view of this website that our guidance counselors really started talking about 2 months ago. The discussion really centered with how can we develop something that can help our students see everything that's in our 109-page course handbook. We have all of these offerings in Dublin City Schools that we're very fortunate to have. But we're also in the middle of a global pandemic, and we started talking about scheduling and making sure that our students have access. So we're talking about having a online scheduling process for our middle schools for the first time, having all of these resources available, and they would be available right after the second read of the handbook by the school board in January. So as soon as our handbook is approved, then our website will go live for our students. So right now on the front page of the course handbook, you have the website that you are certainly welcome to peruse, but our major areas, career planning, graduation requirements, academic pathways, and areas of study. We're very excited about the opportunities. And really over the last 2-3 months, we've put this together. And I think we're probably most excited about the potential that we have to get our student and staff voices involved in this. So this is a living, breathing document for our students. So I would certainly take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. So as you can see, this is pretty intense, and it also brings, once the course handbook's approved, then the rest of the missing pieces will be loaded and then can go live. So questions for Tom or for the team at all?
Tom, could you send the link for the website so that we can review that? And I have another thing, but I'll let somebody else go.
Absolutely.
We'll share the link for sure. Since it's not ready yet, that's why we didn't put it in the board agenda tonight.
I thought of my other thing. Tom, since we couldn't hear the presentation, could you send that to us in a link as well?
I would be happy to do so, and I'm sorry that wasn't loud enough. And yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that this looks amazing, and I can tell a lot of time and effort went into this, and I can't imagine that anyone will have a problem finding their way around. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, the number of course offerings and academies and such, it's just so impressive that our school is able to offer all those kinds of things. And, you know, it has the feel of a college. It has the feel of college options where you can explore almost anything. And I think that Dublin really offers so many opportunities to our students. It's just wonderful. It looks like great work. I look forward to reviewing it all.
Right. Yeah, I would just like the second what everyone else said. The website looks great. Looks like great content and information, and I can't wait to, like Rick said, get in and browse through it myself and watch the videos and be able to read up on some of the additional information out there.
Thank you guys for all your work. Brian, we still have item 10B, correct?
You are correct.
All right. It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education, approve the attached agreement with Minds on Math LLC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second? I'll second it. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weiniger,
Yes.
and Mrs. May.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Stark, Department of Operations.
Good evening, everyone. I have a number of items to go through, so I'm just going to keep going. And at the end, you can either ask questions, or if you got a question in the middle, just stop me and I'll go from there. First item is just an annual item for the Board of Education to approve our bus stops for the year 2021. Special call out to Amy Soleil and Brian Killian. This was an especially challenging year to put together bus stops, especially with ever-changing schedules. Our next item is another item that is procedural, and that is for our payment in lieu of transportation. And these are for those bus routes that have been deemed impractical. It is the board approving payment to those taxpayers in lieu of transportation. Our next item is operations, and the superintendent here is recommending that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution to award Kramer Engineers a contract worth $80,900 to design a full replacement of the Old Sawmill Elementary School HVAC system. Old Sawmill's HVAC system is similar to what Riverside is currently is going to go through and what Sells just recently went. They're all that same end-of-life system. The design and bid would take place in 2021 with a construction date start in next year, or 2 years, in 2022. So if you had a chance to look at our board operating committee presentation, operations is starting to put together a rolling 3-year forecast and starting to put our bids ahead of time. This will help us not only leverage pricing, but help us with better scheduling. So this is a project that, again, we would design and bid in 2021, but we would get it ready for 2022 implementation. The next item up is we're recommending that the Board of Education approve the award to award Garmin Miller and Associates as the designer a contract worth $63,500 to design multiple asphalt repair projects. And if you look at your board docs, you'll see that this again is all the work is going to happen in 2021 as far as design and bid, but the actual construction work is going to happen throughout 2021, 22, and 23. Again, we want to leverage all these projects together for better pricing and design them all at once. And you'll see that we're doing quite a bit of crack, fill, and seal work. That work is really preventative because as we're going through this, we want to do less large projects. And by doing these crack, fill, and seal projects, it extends the life of our parking lots. And lastly, is we're asking the board to approve the attached resolution to purchase some land at Riviera. This is right next to it's right next to Jerome High School. So Riviera Ventures, which is an LLC who've made the development of all the homes where the Riviera Golf Course used to be, has a 13.5-acre parcel of land, and it's directly adjacent to Jerome High School, specifically just east of their football field. The Riviera Ventures Group, and especially Mr. Charlie Ruma, has been very instrumental in helping in presenting this land to the Board of Education. And we actually did a general appraiser of the land, and we did some due diligence. And I will say that we are being presented this land for $750,000, which is approximately 75% of what it's worth. It's at a 25% discount to the market value of the land, which we had professionally appraised over the last month. We've also done some additional due diligence on the land, hiring CTL Engineering to do a phase 1 environmental site assessment, a wetland stream preliminary investigation, an endangered species evaluation, and an archaeological literature review. And all of the tests came up positive with no material issues presented. So the fact that we're getting this land for such a very good discount, it's 13.5 acres. And why this land is so important to us is with Bright Road having Hopewell Elementary, Bright Road has been in the district for 25 years, and it was bought a long time ago with a vision for when the school might need it. And as we know here in Dublin, land is getting more and more scarce, and to get a large parcel of land that we could build a future elementary school on, or something dealing for Jerome High School, it's not only adjacent to existing property, which is very nice for us, but we also get to become our own neighbor, if you so will. There wouldn't be any houses next to it or any other type of development. It would be right adjacent to Jerome High School. And lastly, and this is very exciting, we were able to fund this project through the extra contingency dollars that we had left over from building elementary 13 and 14. Special credit goes to Cornica Cosing, who has done a phenomenal job in managing this project for us for elementary 13 and 14, where we're coming in a little under $2 million of unused contingency dollars for that project. And we'll be able to convert some of that money over to pay for this project. So that's a little bit on the Riviera purchase. And if there's any questions on not only the Riviera, but any of the PI projects I mentioned or some of the bus items.
Hey, Jeff, this is Stu. Great job. Thank you for all that. With regard to the property acquisition, you have a number of outstanding experts. Did you also include our legal counsel in reviewing all the transaction and any documentation that you mentioned?
Excellent question. I should have reviewed that. We actually, we had legal quite involved. So not only did we have counsel from Brickler and Eckler go over the entire transaction, and they're putting together the contract, and they've been working with the Riviera Ventures on that. They not only reviewed all of our reports from CTL, they reviewed the appraisal, they reviewed the title search, everything that goes with the purchase. But we also contacted an additional attorney to talk about the zoning, and that this parcel is already zoned in such a fashion that we could use education. It's already zoned for education. It's even zoned for agricultural. It's an old general zoning to where if we wanted to, we can possibly farm the land until we need it. So it's we had that checked out as well.
Thank you.
All right, there being no additional questions, it's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve items 12A, 12B, 12C, 12D, and 12E. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. HR.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Hoadley. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. For your consideration on the HR agenda, I'll start with the certified section. The first item up for consideration is the job description that we've talked about around diversity, equity, and inclusion. You'll see on here that this is a director level position. We wanted to just thank our community. We've socialized this with our community, and based on some of those conversations, really believe that this is a position, a director level position, that would be consistent with what you would often see for this type of role. We wanted to make sure we didn't lose candidates because of having the coordinator title associated with this. So we've put it on as a director level position for your consideration this evening. If you also look at the agenda, there's a resignation and retirement, Nathan Hansen, and that is a change of occupation. Leaving at the end of this month, that would be very atypical, but it is a change of occupation for him. The other item I would draw your attention to, there's a proposed salary increase for our substitute teachers. One of the things that we're finding right now, especially during the pandemic, is that most of the districts in and around Central Ohio are trying to attract substitutes. And so other districts have also gone the same route in terms of increasing their daily rate for subs. And so for your consideration, we're asking to increase that daily rate from 110 to 125, just to make Dublin more competitive in terms of attracting substitutes that might want to be in Dublin or stay in Dublin. There's an unpaid leave that you'll see as well on that agenda. And then just to kind of finish out that certified agenda, there are supplemental contracts. Most of those are elementary, middle, and high school science club advisors. And then there's a district secondary tech club advisor as well. Moving on to the classified agenda for tonight. Would like to draw your attention. So one of the things on there, you'll see a name, John Bobo. John has been with us since 2006, And John is moving from a custodial position at Riverside to a head custodian position. So we want to congratulate him for that promotion. Pretty exciting to see somebody that spent 14 years in our district moving on to a head custodial position. The other items that are on in terms of unpaid leave for classified, most of those are either for student teachers or they are medical in nature, those leave of absences. So those are there for your consideration as well. And then lastly, there are several stipends. I just want to point out a few of them, and just in terms of some things that we're looking at. The first one on here is a stipend for your approval for the nurses in our district. So as you know, our nurses have been just an incredible part of making sure the work is getting done. They've been putting in incredible hours. And so we have a stipend on to make sure they're compensated for that additional work that they've done during the COVID pandemic. Another one you'll see on here is for the continued professional development as it relates to the District Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This is a stipend. So that committee has work that we're doing right now. So that PD time, that's on for your consideration as well. The last thing I would draw your attention to, there's actually a stipend on here. Lenore Saragini, who works in student support services, has secured a grant. This ROCKS grant helps girls by equipping them with information skills, competence, and confidence to effectively confront and negotiate the challenges they face in adolescence and beyond. So give Lenore a lot of credit for securing this grant for us, but that's what this stipend is for as well, so that we can train our staff on this ROCKS training system. That's all I have on the HR section. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have tonight.
Actually, I just have a statement. Thank you to everyone who made fast track this a little bit. The director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is so needed, and I'm very grateful that everyone who worked so hard to make that happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lynn, while there's several people within the admin team who have obviously helped with this, and even down to the teacher level, you've obviously played a large role in helping push that forward. So thank you for continuing to provide that guidance and make sure that it's something that is put at the forefront of discussion.
Good job.
All right. It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education, approve items 14A, 14B, and 14C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the December 2020 Golden Shamrock Award winner, Mr. Baker.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Mr. Valentine. I am pleased to report that our equipment that we need to live stream board meetings has been installed. We are in the process of testing it. The early test is very positive. Looks and sounds great. We want to tweak some things with lighting, with some camera angles, maybe a little branding and union, but we should be ready to go for the organizational meeting if the board so chooses to have an in-person meeting. Dr. Hoadley mentioned Thursday morning communication regarding next semester's, how we're going to start next semester in terms of the learning mode, and so we'll be working through that this week and preparing that. Our food service is offering 7 days worth of food for each week of holiday break, and so we've been promoting that quite a bit lately because that's quite a impressive thing for us to be doing. And so we've been getting that out there this past week. And in connection with the course handbook that Tom was talking about earlier, we're putting together some commercials for Emerald Campus. So when students are making their decisions about courses next year, we tried to show you one of those tonight, but I think we've got 3 or 4 of those coming on various things to do with Emerald Campus. And lastly, last week we put out a physical education in a pandemic video at the elementary level, which I think if you have time to look at it on YouTube, it's kind of entertaining how that's being done. So that's what I have.
Items for board discussion or future agenda items. All right. Public participation for issues not on the agenda. There being none, move on to executive session. In accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the Dublin Board of Education will go into executive session to consider 1, the B, employment of a public employee or official. Is there a motion to move into confidential executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Second by Mr. Weininger. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. There will be no action coming out of executive session. Thank everyone for their time, and I think the necessary people know who needs to be in executive session. Thank you.
And just a reminder, our organizational meeting will be January 7th.
Thank you.
And that is a Thursday, correct? Not
Yes. Yep.
not normal Monday night.
Yep.
All right. See you guys shortly.